Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another live podcast with the Deal Board Podcast and the dealboardpodcast.com. I am with my co-host, Jessica Fialkovich, and we have two excellent guests today. We're always excited to have JT, which I'll let Jessica introduce. And we have a new face to the Deal Board Podcast and to basically our system as well, Dwayne Cashin, and from Cashin Sales. And Dwayne has had a long career in the sales world, in the sign industry, in the telecom industry, and now he owns his own company. He's a speaker, he's an author. He reached out to us after listening to the Deal Board, and we just hit it off. We talked a lot about sales and sale processes, and we thought that this would be a very interesting topic to have Dwayne kind of chime in on, because he's kind of specializes in helping sales forces be more effective. But we'll let him do that in a minute. Jessica, you want to introduce our one of our favorite guests, JT?
Yes, one of our favorite guests, but also one of our favorite listeners' guests, JT Tatum. He's been on the show a number of times before, but he's got an extensive background in sales management. I counted, I think, was it 32 years with UFG?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so, that's correct, Jess.
32 years with United Franchise Group, started with Signorama, built it really from nothing all the way up to hundreds of franchisees across the world, and then served as president of multiple brands with UFG before he came over to the dark side and became an owner himself. I'm just kidding. An owner himself with Transworld, and has become quickly a leader in the organization, leading his franchise office up in South Carolina. So JT, it's always great to have you on. Also, like, what I love about you too is you love to read, you love to learn in professional development. So I'm sure you have a lot of insights for today's conversation. So about today's conversation, we've heard a lot about how do I sell in this new socially distanced environment. And I kind of want to get rid of the COVID, because we're now moving on, right? So we still have the COVID restrictions, but now let's call it the socially distanced environment. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. And Andy and I will give JT and Dwayne a minute to introduce themselves, but we've got some questions for them, but also want to answer your questions. So using the chat box or the Q&A box, please put questions in there. And the last half of the podcast we'll spend answering questions from the audience. Danielle, who's our moderator and who's helped on all these live podcasts, will help us select those questions to answer. So with that said, JT, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about what your focus is now with Transworld.
Well, as Jess said, I've been in and around franchising and helping individuals get into business, grow businesses, sell businesses since 1986. When we started that first Signorama store in New York, and I grew that brand to about 700 or 800 locations in 60 countries. And then, as she also alluded to, United Franchise Group has blossomed into about a dozen brands over the years, and have spent some extensive time internationally as well as domestically, helping franchise owners continue to grow their business. And I don't know if it's really the dark side. I think some people would say it's the light side when you cross over and you go from being a franchisor to a franchisee, which I did just short time ago. And now am a business advisor with the Transworld Network, and with two offices, one in Greenville, South Carolina, one in Asheville, North Carolina, building a team of advisors, helping, again, folks who are looking to sell a business, buy a business, or grow a franchise concept.
Great.
Awesome. I was kidding about the dark side too.
No,
I think it's the better side.
Yeah, that's great.
And Dwayne, you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yes, I'm an old guy, 34 years. I've been in sales and sales management, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Before starting my consulting firm, I was involved in 4 startups, 2 of which I owned. And I was involved in 2 turnarounds with 2 Fortune 500 companies. And that's where I learned all about process. That's where I learned about the importance of systems and process. And I embraced them because the teams I took over were dead last. And I had to think quickly to figure out, what am I going to do to get myself out of this last place position, which is really uncomfortable. And so had some great mentors. And they turned me on to systems and process, and I've been a big fan of developing those for companies for many years now. And I go in and help them assess their team and figure out if they've got the right people and how to grow and put systems and process in place and experience growth. So that's what I do.
Great. I'll ask you a question a little later about selling your own company, which is an interesting story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a couple questions lined up for JT and Dwayne. Again, just a reminder, throw individual questions you guys have in the Q&A box, or just throw a quick message in the chat box. But so Dwayne, I'm going to start with you with the first question. What have you seen change specifically in the sales environment now that we're in this social distance world?
Thanks for giving me an easy one. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
I guess, yeah, there's a lot there, but
where
just
does the list begin?
overall
Yeah,
trends.
right.
Yeah.
All right. You may have to stop me and tell me when to stop, because I'll get carried away here, which I don't have a problem if you do that, by the way. You know, there's the obvious stuff. There's the face-to-face appointments are down. Some of the industries have been decimated: hospitality, restaurant, event. If you're selling into those markets, obviously it's extremely challenging because the faucet not only has been turned down a little bit, in some cases it's been turned off. The thing that I think is so important is the sales management side of it. We've got to carry on, and the sales manager is the most important position in a company. And if it's a small company, somebody has to own it. So we help our reps focus on some of the vertical markets that are still active that we can serve. We help them assemble a list of those vertical markets. We help them do research and understand, what are they experiencing right now? How are they trying to grow? What problems can we help them with? What opportunities could they seize in this moment? You know, I mean, this is a time of great challenge. And along with that comes an open door of massive opportunity. So we've got to put our creative thinking hats on and look at how we can help certain markets and understand the issues and the challenges. And then the other thing, you know, that I'll wrap this up with is we're all becoming masters of video. And this has been coming for some time. And now the bandwidth of the various platforms is large enough where we can really embrace it. I've got a couple of customers which are embracing it significantly, and they're amazed at the amount of money they're saving on travel and entertainment while they are using it to qualify opportunity, qualify via video before we go face to face. So those are some thoughts on that.
I love it. I love how you've spun it into opportunity too, right? Because we have seen industries decimated, and we've seen quite a bit of change, but it also has created this massive opportunity for change. And JT, I'll throw you the same question because I know you're driven by opportunity, you're driven by positivity. So, you know, what have you seen change in the sales environment, you know, that maybe you think is for the better?
Yeah, well, you know, I brought this with me, Jess. I pulled it off of my office wall because this sign says, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. Okay. And I think there's everybody in the world today is saying, man, I'm being challenged. I am being stretched beyond belief. And that is a good thing, to Dwayne's point, because, you know, I think what it's done is it's also pulled some people out of a rut. There were folks that were just doing it the same way and riding a wave, and it was quite successful, and I didn't have to do anything. And all of a sudden, you know, the tremors started, the earth is shaking, and you have at that point an opportunity to say, all right, how am I gonna do this differently? One thing that I did notice is a lot of salespeople then kind of took it as it became an excuse for some. Okay, it's easy to find the reasons why I can't go forward, why I can't make it work, and nobody would argue that there are definitely some hurdles that you're going to have to overcome. But I love what Dwayne said. We stepped back and we put on our thinking caps and we looked at, you know, parallel clients, people that might have been in the same industry or a complementary industry to what that business was doing. And then they go after that client base instead of just licking their wounds and, oh, you know, feel sorry for myself and, oh, that's just the way it's going to be. No, you have to be able to adapt. You know, that word pivot, there's probably a bunch of COVID overly used terminology. So I said, I'm not going to use that word today, but you have to be able to be challenged. You got to rise above the challenge. And I think that's going to be the thing that sets people apart, the winners from the losers, or the go forward, the thrivers from the survivors. I'm a big fan of let's thrive in this thing, find a way to make it better. And Yeah, Dwayne's right. You put some new systems in place. Maybe the old systems need to be abandoned. Maybe they just need to be tweaked, but it can't be business as usual.
Right. So you took away my next question, because that was exactly the next question is, how are they pivoting? I mean, how do you see some business owners, or what should they do to kind of approach this? And, of course, we'll get right into Dwayne's systematic, but JT, what's kind of the first thing maybe that you did to adapt?
Sure. Well, the first thing was for me was mental. And I think that's always where it begins, because there's things happening outside of you that you can't control. Okay. And I often say, control the controllable. The things that I do have control over, exercise control over. The things I don't have any control over, just let them happen the way they're going to happen. And so for us, my first mental state was I refused to participate in a pandemic. I understand it's going on around me. I'm not saying I stick my head in the sand and ignore what's happening, but I'm not going to use that as a way to give myself an out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep pushing forward, because at some point this too shall pass, and I have to be prepared for the next step after that. So yeah, we did some things differently. We started having, like everybody else, more Zoom calls. But what I was cautious with my team was to say, look, don't get lazy now and just say, well, I emailed them and I didn't hear back from them. Well, that wasn't an acceptable excuse before. It sure isn't going to be an acceptable excuse now. Did you call the person? Did you try them by text? Did you send them the video? Did you schedule the Zoom call? Just because I can't meet you face to face doesn't mean I can't meet you. And so we had to come up with those strategies to say, our numbers are going to be impacted by how many conversations and meetings, virtual or otherwise, we hold. And if we stop having them, we can predict what's going to happen in the end. So you can't stop that activity. And that's how we got into it. We just changed the way the activity was being done. We didn't give ourselves the out of saying, well, the activity's off, so sales are going to go down, and that's just going to be the way it is.
And Dwayne, I mean, you talk about process a lot. So are you seeing some processes change?
I am. I am. I'm seeing processes changed among those individuals that, as JT said, are mentally strong. I'll tell you a quick little story. I did a keynote speech at an event up in Toronto before the pandemic here. And I interviewed a top procurement person at Verizon. And I asked her, when you agree to meet with a sales rep and when you find a sales rep to be credible, what did they say to you? How did they act? And she laughed. And I said, why are you laughing? She said, well, let me tell you about a phone call I got yesterday from a lighting salesperson. She happened to pick up the phone because she thought it was a conference call. So this sales rep got lucky and got her on the phone. And the first thing out of his mouth is, my name is Tony. Nice to meet you, and I think I can save you 30% on your lighting. So this sales representative is using a tired approach of I can save you money. He's also focusing on his product. And the procurement is a VP with Verizon. She said, tell me what you got, Tony. He said, well, first of all, can you tell me what kind of lighting you have in your Verizon stores? The guy opens up saying he's going to save her 30%, and he doesn't even know the kind of lighting that she has. The representative didn't go into any of the Verizon retail stores to assess what kind of lighting they have, talk to some of the managers and say, what are the challenges with lighting? What is your vision with lighting? Do you like intense lighting? Do you like it mellow? There's all kinds of questions that could have been asked. This is how we used to sell 50 years ago. And it's sad, it's encouraging to me because it keeps me busy. Easily 75% of sales reps are still selling with the product as the approach and lacking an understanding of what is it that this prospect needs. And my point is, you can pick up all the Zoom calls you want. You can make 1 million texts a day and leave 1,000 voicemails. But if you're not engaging with people and demonstrating you understand their world, it's all for naught. So I am on a crusade, and my new book is going to deal with this. I'm going to help salespeople, sales management really, because the leaders are the ones that are going to enact the change, right? I'm going to help the leaders understand how to transform a salesperson to a business person. And then when they're sending an email, then when they're leaving a voicemail, the information is going to be relevant and germane to their world. This is a big change that I think needs to happen in order to capture people's attention today.
Yeah. And let me spin off of that, because there's a new salesperson on our team, and he's a young guy, and he's asking for, as you said, Jess, leadership training. What do I do? What do I read? He said, you got any good books? I said, have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie? He's like, no. Is that a really old book? I go, it is. And it's time tested and it's true. And you need to read that book. And one piece of what Carnegie talks about out of the whole book, there's lots of great nuggets in there, but one of those he talks about is how the salesperson approaches and says, I can do, we can do, it's all about me. And the bottom line is, you're not addressing what the target is interested in. You got to talk about what's important to them. I mean, we've all heard that. Everybody's favorite radio station is WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? And if you're not approaching it that way, you're completely missing the mark. And Carnegie's been talking about that since the 40s.
That's great.
We actually just read that book as a sales team together. We have a book club and we read it, and it's so incredible how relevant it still is today.
Right.
Like with everything that's changed in the environment, it's still relevant. And I think you guys both bring up good points. And what I find most interesting about this pandemic is there's all these movements that have been previously happening in business and in sales, and this pandemic has just pushed it forward, right? So we talked about Zoom, right? And I've joked on these calls with Andy before, I've wanted to go to Zoom coffee meetings for a very long time, and now I get to, right? And there's been this underlying cultural transition in sales about it being about the customer. And the really cool part that I saw that happened during the pandemic is it forced our sales staff to really focus on the customer. When everything got shut down, when all the businesses got shut down, when the economy got shut down, the first thing they had to do is jump on the phone and call their clients and their customers and say, are you okay? How's it going with you? And the conversation instantly switched. So I find that really interesting, is that it could have been COVID, it could have been recession, it could have been anything, but it's forced, to steal JT's stereotypical term we're not going to use, it's forced us all to pivot, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So the next topic I want to talk about, and just kind of JT, have you introduce, is we're coming up on halftime, right? And JT, I'll have you talk about a little bit what halftime is, but we're coming up on halftime. We're coming out of closed economies, and we're transitioning to social distance. But if you're a sales rep or a sales manager, how are you approaching goal setting for the second half of the year?
One of my favorite topics. I love goal setting. Look, there has to be a dose of reality. Everybody coming into halftime, which is, like halftime in a game, you go and you check out what's my progress so far and how close am I to getting to the end of whatever my game plan was. And you can't put your head in the sand, as we said earlier, and just pretend nothing happened. Of course, something's happened. But here's what we've agreed here. And I would, as a business owner, I'd implore you to rethink what the goal is, but don't take the easy way out and just say, well, I'm going to change the goal. Okay. You might have to make an adjustment to the goal, but what you should really be doing is changing the plan. And it goes back to what we were saying already. The goal still has to remain, okay, within reason. I mean, obviously, am I going to do 100% of what I set out to do at my strategic planning last year, given the fact that we had a 60 to 90 day hiatus? Probably not. But does that mean I'm going to take my goal down by 25%? Not in my world. We're not. We're going to adapt the plan. We're going to change the plan more than just decrease the goal, because that's the easy way to take it. Okay. Look, there's an old adage that said, people only change when one of two things happen. Either there's an incredible opportunity in front of them, or if I don't change, something really, really bad is about to happen. So, well, if the doctor's saying, hey, if you don't lose weight, you're going to have a massive heart attack and die in the next 6 months, that's a fear-driven change. I got to take that. But if the doctor has another piece of advice over here that says, hey, if you do these two things, you're going to extend your life expectancy by 20 years, that's opportunity. This is problem or consequence. This is opportunity. What we're in the middle of right now is a little bit of both. We have a problem that we can't control, but we also have great opportunity in front of us because take a look at our industry as business brokers. How many business owners are coming to market now that maybe wanted to sell a year or 2 years ago, but held on because they were riding the wave and things were going great. And now they're coming back and saying, time for me to exit. And how many buyers are coming into the market because they've been laid off or furloughed or just like, hey, I'm not working for that guy anymore. I'm not afraid to do the work. I'm just going to do it for me. I had a guy sitting in this office where I'm standing right now 30 minutes ago is exactly in that scenario. And we put a business in front of him that we're going to speak to the owner on next week. So but the goal hasn't changed. We're still going after the same number of sales, helping the same number of people get into business, but our approach to the goal, our tactics, let's say, that's what we're changing. We're changing the plan, not the outcome.
Love it. Love it. Dwayne, what about you? What advice do you have for people tackling the back half of the year?
Again, I go back to the importance of leadership. Whether it's a small company and the president is functioning as the sales manager, or whether it's a larger team and there is a full-time sales manager, these are the leaders that are going to guide salespeople, help them remain calm, and help them understand what it is they need to learn. I believe this is a period of intense learning. I've had hundreds of sales reps report to me over the years. I speak in front of rooms of 300 and 400 sales reps, and I'll ask them, how many of you right now are reading a book on sales? And out of 400 people, maybe 80 hands go up. I mean, this happens in every audience that I deal with. You see, this has got to change, and leadership needs to help these salespeople go to school. They need to become students of business. Before they contact anyone, they need to understand three things. Number one, they need to understand a little bit about the industry that prospect is in. What are the trends? What are the opportunities? What are they going to have a conversation about? What questions should that rep prepare before they make contact? And then, of course, the rep has to go on the prospect's website and see who some of their customers are. And is there an article by the CEO or the president that describes the culture of that company? Again, a couple questions around that. That's beautiful. And then the third thing is these reps need to understand the title and the responsibilities of the person they're calling. What's it like to walk in that person's shoes? And this takes work. And I'm a sales professional. We're all sales professionals. I don't want to insult anyone, but I've got to tell you that salespeople are notorious for wanting to take shortcuts. They think they're going to rely on their personality. They're going to rely on their humor, and they're going to crack into some large deals and capture the attention of an executive. It doesn't work that way anymore. So when I'm working with my clients and they want to hit certain revenue goals, that's fine. But the big question is, how are you going to do it?
Right. What's the steps? What's the tactics? Exactly.
What are the steps? Who are you going to contact? What systems are you going to follow? How are you going to create questions? How are you going to keep track of the information? You got to live in CRM today. This is hard work. And that's why the sales management position, in my opinion, is so critical, because it is that leader who sets the expectation, who establishes accountability. It's complex to pull it off and to do it right, which I'm sure we all realize that.
But it's necessary.
We're all laughing.
Necessary, Dwayne. Yeah,
we're all laughing at the salespeople like to take shortcuts.
Yeah, I'm glad, because we're all. I mean, Dwayne's speaking to us too, right? So
yeah, sure.
He and I are all sales managers, right? We own our own sales organizations, and that's our primary role. But yeah, there was a few times I saw all three of us snicker of like, yeah, we know that. We live and breathe that every day.
So Dwayne, that's a perfect point. So that just leads us right into kind of our next topic. Like, what are you telling people, and you don't have to obviously give away your secret sauce there, but maybe a practical tip or two of what they should be doing to kind of repositioning themselves or accelerate that learning right now. I mean, having them read books is great. So how are you handling your sales managers right now?
There's like 5 questions in your one question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Because I figured you could take any one of them and run with it.
Well, why don't you pick one?
So what are you telling people to do right now? Like, what's the first step?
This is so basic. It's almost embarrassing. I'm trying to help them understand the preparation that goes into making it work. If you want to, if we're going to be in the game, let's go for number one. If we're going to go for the number one position and win and have a massively high closing ratio and blow our numbers out, let's realize it's going to take some work. There are many sports teams that are run far better than companies. You will never see a professional sports team. I'm looking at your baseball picture behind you, JT. You're never going to see a professional baseball, football, basketball team go out on the court without a plan.
Right.
They've looked at the competition's film. They understand their strengths, their weaknesses. They know how to exploit their weaknesses. They know how to quell their strengths. This takes a lot of hours. It takes a lot of thought, but that's how people win games. Wooden, the famous coach Wooden, what was it at UCLA? What did he win? 9 out of 10 championships? 9 out of 10. How do you do that? The guy was into process and systems big time. The first practice, he would have all the players take their shoes off, take their shoes and their sneakers and their socks off. He wanted to show them how to put the socks on properly and how to tie their shoes at the right tension so they didn't get blisters, so that they could apply themselves 150% throughout the entire game. So I'm trying to help people understand it's about systems and process, and it's about accountability. It's about like Southwest Airlines or Zappos shoes, creating an environment where people want to come to work, where they have fun, where they're respected, their opinion matters. And then, oh yeah, man, there's process and there's systems, there's expectations. You know, you go easy on the people, show them a lot of love, and put firm systems and process in place and set accountability so that when a person walks in that front door every day, they know exactly what's expected of them and they know that they're appreciated and loved. So, you know, that's, you got to get that culture in place before anything is going to happen.
And the question is it also helped that he had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton, but maybe he made those guys better.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and those guys, you know, you listen to two of them, you know, swear by coach, you know, which they called them, obviously.
Can we say Wooden was also a good recruiter? Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
And how important is that in a sales organization? Getting the right people and putting them in the right seats.
And I'll throw that to JT because JT understands that as well, right?
Yeah. Well, and whatever role you put any person in, certainly the sales is the piece that drives the company forward. And that's kind of what this whole episode is about, is sales and the social distancing piece of it. But everybody that you put in has to be in the right spot. And they have to know from day one, this is what we expect of you. And if they are doing a great job, you know, executing on the tasks, the activity is what leads to the result. Don't measure the result at the end of the month and then look back and go, wow, we didn't hit the result. Oh, that's too late. You need to be looking at the activity on a regular basis to make sure that, you know, it's the blocking and tackling is happening. That's how we move the ball down the field. It's not complicated, but it does take the discipline of making sure it's explained, the game plan is put together, and then somebody's managing the execution.
So can I ask JT a question?
Sure.
JT, in your experience, you're a very experienced guy. You're dealing with a lot of sales organizations. What percentage would you say sales organizations are squared away with systems and process and culture? What percentage?
Small percentage, Dwayne. If I had to guess, out of all the ones that I've connected with and been involved with, I would tell you it's less than 20%.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that 80% of these teams that have really smart people working there, owners, real smart people,
right? Why
are 8 out of 10 of them failing in this area? What's your opinion on that?
Because it takes the planning. It's like, let me go back to the goal setting thing that I'm a huge fan of. You know, and I learned this from Ziegler, I don't know how many years ago. And one of the steps in that process was step number 3 in goal setting was, where are the obstacles? What's going to happen when something goes wrong? And then what am I going to do when it happens? Because the time to come up with the game plan is not when you need it. It's before you need it. Okay. And quite frankly, most people, when they get to step number 3, or the third W in goal setting, as I like to call it, they look at it and they go, that's too much work. It's easier to just go and do something than it is to plan ahead. Okay, there's another old adage. Yeah, there's another old adage that says 1 minute of planning saves 10 minutes of execution. But it's much easier to just go start something than it is to put the game plan together first and then execute on it.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, what you just said, being ill-prepared, we see that with sales reps and handling objections, particularly the objection, hey, your price is kind of high. I think I got to go talk to some other people. Most sales reps just get that deer in the eye look. I don't know what to say.
Or they discount.
Yeah. They call you up. Hey, Andrew, can I discount this deal? I think I can get it. This is a really well-qualified deal, but I need to discount it, Andrew. Can you help me? I'm a little light on sales this month. I need the commission.
Yeah,
he's been sitting in my office, I think.
I was gonna say, I think also Andy and I are thinking about the same sales rep we recently interacted with too. So, yeah. But at this point, I mean, you guys have offered so much great advice, but let's move to some questions. And just to remind everybody, we've got 2 top sales coaches, 2 top sales trainers, experienced gentlemen on the line. If you have questions related to your sales process, sales management, how to sell in a social distance environment, throw those in the Q&A. I'm going to toss each of you a really easy one to start. And both of you brought up learning and growth and development. And the question is, can you guys just recommend 1 or 2 books that are crucial for people to read that are sitting in a sales role? Maybe Dwayne, why don't you answer it first?
Well, I think The Challenger Sale is an excellent book. It's based on a great deal of research that identified 5 different selling types: the relationship salesperson, the needs analysis salesperson. I can't remember them all. The challenger is one of them. And what they found in that study was that the representative, who was the relationship salesperson, which we all kind of thought, wow, they're going to be number 1, they were almost last. And the challenger rep was number 1. And what distinguished the challenger rep was that they are business people. And the term is they have the ability to challenge the prospect. They have the ability to ask not only generic questions, but the tough questions. Like, Jessica, if you don't increase your sales in 2020 by 10 to 15%, what's going to happen? What are the consequences that you're going to experience? You know, hey, Andrew, if you don't figure out a way to calm down the advancement of that new competitor that you have, what's going to happen to your company by the end of the year? These are consequence questions. So reading that book, I think, is very helpful so a rep can understand maybe what category they are in and what the strengths are of each category, and then what the weaknesses are. I would recommend The Challenger.
Okay, The Challenger. We also, as a side note, Dwayne, we have a couple requests for your new book. So as soon as you have that out, let us know, and we'll get that out to the network so they can purchase that for that.
I think I'm going to have JT do my forward.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I'm happy to do it. I'm going to give you 3 quick titles. Okay, there's the first one's called The Little Red Book of Selling, and the author's name is Jeffrey Gitomer. Exactly. Just some, regular things that most people, and other things that you're going to look at and go, what? But he's got some, let's call them non-traditional forms of marketing and selling that a salesperson could definitely apply. The second one would be Selling for Dummies by a guy named Tom Hopkins. Now, Hopkins was in real estate and financial stuff for years. Okay, became a motivational speaker. Dwayne probably knows it, being on the speaking circuit. Really good. Selling for Dummies. It's kind of like that whole For Dummies series, right? Customer service for dummies, etc. Selling for Dummies.
Love
by
Tom Hopkins.
Yeah, real good stuff. And then the third one's really not a sales book. Well, we already said, I don't want to go over that. How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you're not reading that as a salesperson, that should be like, foundational piece, and then build on that. There's a real small book. It's a man book. I call it a man book because it's about that big and maybe that thick. It doesn't have any pictures, otherwise it would be a little man book, but it's a man book, easy read, and it's called The 101 Distinctions Between Success and Failure by Keith Cameron Smith. 101 Distinctions by Success and Failure. I'm assuming you'll put these in the show notes so people could reference them if they wanted to. And then the last thing is, not just reading, because some people are great readers and some people not so great readers. They read, they nod off, they drool on themselves, and then they read the same page again. So if that's not you, subscribe, get online, do audiobooks, or, I guess I would be dating myself if I said listen to some CDs, but Brian Tracy is, I'm a long-term Brian Tracy fan, and he's got some real good cassettes. Cassettes, did I just say that word? Wow, I should say 8 tracks too, just to really take it backwards. Okay, some really good training materials on sales, goal setting, mastering your time, and his name is Brian Tracy, Tracy.
Yeah. And actually, we're on a podcast right now, 2 podcasts. And I
Exactly.
don't know if you know this, but like Zig Ziglar, they have a podcast now where they recycle a lot of his recordings, and you can listen. If you don't have a cassette player anymore, you can listen to it through the podcast.
Yes.
So,
his son, Tom, hosts that. It's a great podcast. Yes.
Yeah. I like that one too. Well, great. Andy, why don't you kick the next question off?
Sure. Somebody asked the question, here at Transworld, we tend to be an older demographic here. So you're a young guy here, Dwayne, so don't worry about it. You're amongst the people here. We have here at Transworld in Florida, we have 3 octogenarians. And so some of our more elder statesmen, let's call them, are asking the question, listen, they might be immunocompromised, but they still want to work. Like, do you have any tips for them to get out there still?
They want to work as sales professionals?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if they're, there's just a lot of great reasons to fully embrace video today. I think that what people should do is sit down and ask themselves, I'm sorry, Andrew, I'm a little bit confused on the question. So these are individuals that still want to help companies buy and sell businesses, right?
Yes.
But they physically can't go out and meet with people?
Correct.
Correct.
Even
when the smoke clears, is that right?
Well, I guess as the smoke clears though, but they want to be careful. So
okay.
How do they maximize?
Yeah, maximize the video, the Zoom or whatever platform that you want to do. Maximize that. And as you said, get a decent microphone, get a decent camera, get some lighting, set yourself up with a background, try to be, as professional as you can with it, and then put together your outline. And make contact. We've got to engage people, right? This has always been the case. Prospecting, identifying leads, and qualifying has always been the most challenging part of selling. And what I find is people that have the ability to capture attention, they understand the person they're calling, at least what world they're in, what industry are they in, what is their title, therefore what are their responsibilities, therefore what challenges and opportunities might they be listening to, and then create at least a 7-step process to touch someone. And every touch should be a phone call first, because we're trying to get them on the phone. And then if we get their voicemail, we have to be prepared with step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. voicemail. And we have to have some document, something that we can send to them. And every touch, we must give them value based on the industry they're in, based on the company they have, based on their title. We can ask them provocative questions. Have you ever thought of this? Here's an idea. Here's a great article in Inc. magazine. Look at this great article in Entrepreneur I'm sending to you. And what's happening is in that process, and you're doing this all from your office, you're building familiarity with the prospect. They're seeing that you're making an effort to help them. It's all about them. It's not about you. These sales reps that call and say, hey, I would really like to talk with you. Oh, you would? You'd really like that? Well, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't know you. And frankly, right now, maybe I'll get to like you and care about you, but right now I don't care what you want. Does that make sense? Salespeople are
perfect.
constantly, hey, Bill, it's Harry. I've left you 3 voicemails and you haven't gotten back to me yet. Please call me back. It's pitiful. 7 steps: killer voicemail, email, use video, invite people for conversations, and every touch has to be about them and their world. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to, I think the biggest thing is plan. I mean, you talked about it earlier, it's just being prepared. And
exactly.
So you got to step up your game, as you know, as you've laid out already. So
I think what you just said could be the title of a book right now. Step up your game. Step up your game. I'm writing a blog soon. It's going to be called Wing It Harder. How's that?
Love it.
And then under it'll say, for the sales rep looking for shortcuts, wing it harder. That'll be good.
JT, you want to add to that at all?
I think you better get connected to Dwayne, because I think he just sold him he owes you royalty on that book title, is what I think. Opportunistic. He's like, I got him. This is perfect. Exactly. No, I think you guys have really kind of, you keep circling back to the same thing over and over again. Like Dwayne said, I care. You don't even respond to those emails. And that goes back to if you read that, you'll find it. When you read How to Win Friends and Influence People, you'll find the chapter. What it says, it's not about you, it's about the prospect. Make everything about the prospect. If you go back to, the story brand, and you think about what Donald Miller's saying, and that how do you create a story wrapped around what's important to the client, to the customer, and you become a resource for the customer. You're not the hero of their story. They're the hero of their story, but you become the Obi-Wan Kenobi. You become the Yoda. You become the one that comes alongside of them and helps them get to where they're looking to get to.
That's great advice. Yeah. And yeah, we've talked about the story brand. I'm a huge fan of it, but it's just focusing. And that's another good one to add to the show notes too, Danielle. Just another tactic of how you're focusing on the customer, not you. So we've got another question. I think this is, it's from Jeremy, but I think it's probably relevant to a number of people on the call. And he's the new guy. So he's new on a sales team and he doesn't have yet examples of engagements or customers that he's worked with. So JT, I'll throw it to you first. How would you approach selling services that your team has an expertise in? Maybe you're not an expert yet.
That's why you're on a team. I mean, are you kidding? You've got everything that you need. You just have it's just in somebody else's head. Okay. It's somebody else's voice, which is actually even better. In sales, we call that a double. Okay. So I'm saying one thing to Jess, and then I have Andy have a conversation with Jess, and Andy says the same thing JT say. What is Jess saying? Oh, Andy and JT are saying the same thing. Must be true. And it should always be true. Let me give you that caveat. Don't lie. Okay. But look, when we first started our office here, one of the first businesses we sold, the prospect came and said, how many of these have you sold before? Now I'm thinking in the back of my mind, me personally, none. But as a network, Transworld's been around for 41 years. We've sold tens of thousands of businesses. So I said, we've got experience selling businesses of all types. She said, can I talk to somebody who, I'd like to talk to a client. I said, great, I'll make that happen. I don't know where I was going to get that from. I made one phone call back to our office, and Andy put me in touch with the guy who had done exactly that industry before. I called him. I introduced the two of them together. He had a validation call with that prospect, and the next day I had my listing appointment. So you're the new guy, use the resources. Nobody hired you assuming as the new guy, you're going to know everything there is to know. They hired you for your talent and ability to be able to use the resources that are around you. No man is an island.
Yeah. And I love that. And that's exactly, like you said, that's why you join a sales team and you're not a lone solo provider. Dwayne, anything to add to that?
No, I think what JT said, I think he nailed it. The only thing I would add is maybe a little verbiage in handling an objection. When I first started in consulting, a president and CEO would say, Dwayne, have you ever worked with a SAS company, software as a service?
Yeah.
And at that point I hadn't. And I fumbled and I left. And I contacted my mentor. I hope everybody has mentors. I hope everybody is in a mastermind. Another book you've got to read is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon
Hill. Yeah.
Right. Another great book. They talk about mastermind, being with other people that have experienced what you've experienced, asking their advice, shortcutting so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I've always had mentors, and I went to my mentor and I said, man, I blew it. This guy gave me an objection and I absolutely froze. I did not know what to say. And he said, well, here's what I think you should say the next time it happens. He said, this is what you want to say. He says, Dwayne, you've never worked with an SAS company. That's correct, Bill, I haven't. But I think there's a better question. And that question is, do I understand the challenges that your salespeople face in selling to your clients? Do I understand the challenge of capturing the attention of a prospect? Do I understand the challenge of the difference between the president and CEO of a company you're calling on and the technical IT manager? Do I understand how they think? Do I understand how to approach them and engage in a conversation? One is business, top line related, profit related. The other one is detailed, technical related. That's a better question. And yes, I understand all that. What do you say we give this a shot?
Yeah, great close.
I know my mentor helped me with that, and I've been using that for years, and it's a home run. So so for those of you that find yourself in that situation when you're young, or you're just starting out, and they say, hey man, do you have experience in our industry? You have a client I can talk to that you serve in our industry? Well, I think there's a better question, Tony. And that question is, do I understand the challenges that you face? Do I understand the ways, the best practices, and how to help you get what you want? And the answer is yes. What do you say we have a serious conversation around putting a plan together?
So where
that's
sorry, Andy, and where Dwayne is
perfect.
at is, remember what he said a few minutes ago about those different sales types, and that sales type changed the perspective of the buyer. He didn't just answer the question, he answered the question he wanted to answer. Okay, he took control. And you have to be able to have enthusiasm for what you're selling. You got to have conviction, believing that what you're selling and what you're providing is right. And you have to be able to control the process. And that's what he just did. It's dynamite.
And of course, the process is always controlled by the questions we ask, right, JT?
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. You're taking them down the path.
Yeah.
And the questions get you there. Yes.
And when they go off the path, we say, oh, JT, what you just said was really fascinating. Can I ask you a question about that, JT? Now I'm bringing you back. Right? I'm going to ask you a question, which is going to put you back on the track. And then, I agree with you completely.
That's right.
We need to have Dwayne at a conference.
I was going to say, this is a good time to also mention, this is being recorded. So the recording will be sent out afterwards. So if you guys want to listen to this again, there's been some really great sound bites from both JT and Dwayne. So there will be a recording
JT and I will team up. We'll do a team conference.
There you go.
Oh, put me on a stage with another bald guy with glasses. I can't wait.
We're all looking good. Come on.
Yeah, we are. I don't know, Jess. You're the odd gal out here.
So, Jess, you want to wrap it up with a question, or?
Yeah, why don't we do a closing piece of advice? So, JT, Dwayne, just a closing piece of advice for all the sales professionals out there. We'll do that, and then I am going to have you just give your information too, if anybody wants to connect with you in the future. We'll also drop that into the show notes. But JT, why don't we start with a closing piece of advice from you first?
Sure. Well, like I said earlier, don't change the goal, change the plan. It's easy to give yourself the out. Just think of a new way to get to where you're looking to get to. And I want to go back to something that the octogenarians that Andy brought up said, hey, how do I do it differently? And yeah, use the video for sure. Use the technology that's out there. Okay. This LinkedIn and being able to connect with people that way, and getting into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is a great little investment for a salesperson to make. Now I can get to the decision makers I'm trying to reach. But do it the right way. You don't go on LinkedIn Sales Navigator and say, here's who I am and here's my commercial. Now you're not talking to them again. You're talking at them. Get into their circle, get into their sphere of influence. Let them see you start popping up and go, who is that guy? You comment on a post, you follow their blog, you send them an article, all the little things similar to what Dwayne was saying. You have to become the person in their peripheral vision, if not right in front of them first. And then when you have the opportunity to be able to connect with them, connect in a meaningful way that's not all about you. It's not the you commercial. You're going to get your chance to do that later on. Right now, understand what they're looking for, put yourself in their vision, you know, where they can pick you up, and then just bring value to them. And it's a cliche. It's like pivot. They'll bring value. Well, what the heck does that mean? That's a great question. You should sit down and ask yourself that. Write out what the things are that you do that could bring value to the people that you're looking to go before, and then make sure that's the information you're putting in front of them.
Awesome. Great advice. Great advice. Dwayne, what about you? Last piece of parting advice to the audience.
Well, I'm going to go back to something that JT said earlier, and he said that it's all up here.
Yeah.
It's a 6 inches from here to here. I don't care how smooth somebody is. Tom Hopkins is one of the smoothest guys I've ever heard, right, JT?
That is very true.
Man, is that guy smooth? I don't care how smooth you are. If you don't have the mental discipline and the confidence to ask some tough questions, if you're not prepared by understanding the industry your prospects are in, going on their website, understanding who their customers are, that's a great one. When you find out who your prospect serves, that'll help you understand how they make decisions and the pressure they're under, right? You need all this information. But then you've got to have the mental DNA to handle rejection so you don't take it personally. You have to be extremely persistent in a very value-oriented way. You've got to get comfortable discussing money and finance. What is the budget, Tony? Let me know, have you purchased anything like this before? What did you spend before? How much money have you set aside? You got to be comfortable having a financial conversation. All of these things are critical because they'll get in our way. And the other thing that just breaks my heart is the lack of pride that some reps have in themselves as a professional salesperson. That's another one of my campaigns before I'm dead. I want people to go, yeah, Dwayne really helped me understand that sales is an honorable profession, and that frankly, nothing much happens in the world unless people are presenting great ideas and solutions. Amen. Nothing really happens in the world. You don't need ships going across the ocean or FedEx planes or UPS trains. You don't need all this stuff unless product is moving back and forth. And a lot of sales reps have this concept that they're product peddlers. You know, they're embarrassed to be in sales. That's not the right mindset.
No.
You got to have a mindset. You're going to help people learn business, understand where costs lie, understand where opportunities lie, learn that stuff. Create your questions in advance. Like JT said, have it all ready to go. And then contact decision makers. See, that's the other thing. You got to have confidence to contact people that have decision-making authority. You spend your life down in procurement or down with technical screeners, you're never going to really advance your career. So I would just say, go for it. Be a professional and strive to be absolutely magnificent. You own your own business.
There you go.
Good stuff.
It can't get better than this, right, Jessica?
We're getting a couple amens in the comments there. I feel thoroughly schooled.
Yeah, I think that's
Just
a great place. Yeah, I think that's a great place to end. Really can't top it on that. So, Dwayne, if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they connect with you?
My website is Cashin Sales. My last name is spelled C-A-S-H-I-N, just like it sounds. Andrew asked me if that was a fake name.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it. He's a sales guy that's cashing in. Right. Yeah. Okay.
I got lucky. Yeah, cashinsales.com. And you can contact me and we can have a cup of coffee over the internet.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. And JT, how best to get with you?
Call my mobile 864-315-8998. That's 864-315-8998. Or you can connect to me by email at JTTATE as in Echo, M as in Mike @tworld.com.
All right. Another great long podcast, but well worth it, right, Jessica?
Well worth it. And like we said, if you're listening to this on the recording, we hope we got something out of it. If you have any questions for us, you can reach us at thedealboardpodcast.com. But thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, JT. Thank you,
You're
Dwayne.
welcome. Thanks. Nice to see you, Dwayne.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed meeting you all.